So there have been some rumblings that Silicon wasn't committed to using Chia. I first heard some weird stuff when they took the money, and I couldn't believe it at first. So I was like, well, it remains to be seen. Then I heard something weird about what happened at Chia Toronto, which made me even more nervous. And then today, I look at this OpenStargate thing and I see no mention of Chia. And at this point, I am thoroughly convinced that Silicon is not planning on using Chia and never intended to use Chia from the rip. So I'm not sure exactly how they got the money from Chia to launch this company that isn't going to advance the state of the art of the Chia blockchain. I don't think this is going to pump anybody's Chia bags. Lucas, we've been talking about this in the background. What's your thoughts here after looking through what they posted about OpenStargate?
I mean, my thoughts are I'm sad to see that they have not built on Chia. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm sad. I'm disgusted. But they took a massive investment from the Chia pre-farm, and you would have thought that would have built that they would have focused on building on Chia, but instead they're building on Akash. Um, I and we've talked about it a little bit. I don't remember uh, when you brought this to my attention, but I want to hear what the first whisperings that you heard were to begin with.
Well, I heard some rumblings that like when this was originally conceived, that Akash and RunPod were the technologies that were being considered and used under the covers. And RunPod was always the thing that had been used. I had a little bit of, visibility to this because of the way that Silicon came to be. It kind of came out of some stuff that we were doing at Evergreen, because at Evergreen we had started to move into doing things with GPUs. And when I say we, it was a little bit after my time. So, I have a little bit of anecdotal evidence of these things moving in the direction. But then, after after I left, then I was able to kind of see things from an arm's length, from a distance. So I knew that Evergreen was moving in this direction and that Dylan was doing this kind of stuff. And so then when he became a part of Silicon, and it became obvious that some of the groundwork that had been laid was going to be used, I wasn't surprised that they were using RunPod and that he kept talking about it when he would, make tweets and posts and whatever. And so if you could read between the lines, you could see little evidences of this. I heard that the contract didn't actually state that it had to use Chia. And that I never saw the contract, so this is kind of anecdotal evidence that they weren't committed to using Chia. And I don't know if Gene cared. Maybe he didn't, because at the time I think that there was a really big need for revenue to come into Chia because they were really keen to IPO. And I don't think the whole idea of Bermuda was really cooked at the time. So I don't know if that was a bit more under duress that they did that deal and got that done, or who was pushing for that. But it always struck me as kind of a really big deal, a really massive investment, when there were so many projects in the Chia ecosystem that had gone unfunded. So to see such a massive amount of money to go to just this one team building something which was so not focused on Chia was just baffling to me. So that was kind of the 1-2 for me. Then I heard that there was some amount of trying to get the tech working at Chia Toronto on Chia, and that it didn't work, that they couldn't figure it out. I also saw no evidence that Silicon was investing in Chia, period. Because when you're making a Chia based company, you have to do a whole bunch of things. You have to run nodes, you have to make a client. I mean, you can't just depend on random tools that are in the community and say, well, this is what we're going to build our business on top of. To say that, well, you're going to use Sage Wallet, but you're not actively investing in Sage. You're not putting devs on it. You're not making contributions to the repository. You're not making your own fork of it and doing stuff so that you're in control of your own destiny, so that, you know, rigidity doesn't push something that breaks all of your customers. You've got to do these things to have a business which is independent and isn't bound to anyone else. And they weren't doing any of that kind of stuff. So it was kind of obvious that they weren't doing it. Now we have this. And as soon as I scrolled down to this distributed compute and I saw the little logo set and Chia's not there, that to me was it. That was the point at which I said, well, now they've just come out full force here. They're leaving Chia off the deck. This is essentially like a pitch deck. You know, it's like, here's how we're going to do it. And it's not on there. And I got to imagine that the guys at Chia are absolutely furious and probably, you know, scrambling for their lawyers at this point.
Well, if they're not furious, I think the Chia community should be, because the investment that was made by CNI into Silicon or Berkeley Compute at the time did not come from money that was invested directly into CNI, but from the pre-farm. And I told myself, well, at the time I said, okay, well, this is going to give a broader spectrum of businesses that are building on Chia, that are doing the things that which you just described. That will be good for everybody, for more development and more products being realized on Chia blockchain. Yay, good deal. So again, if CNI isn't furious about this, I think the Chia community should be, because they're the ones who hold XCH. They're the ones who ultimately have forked over the millions of dollars to fund Silicon.
Yeah, it's like one of those insidious forms of inflation in some sense. If the pre-farm had stayed locked away or even got burned at some point, then Chia is like a Bitcoin. It has a limited amount. It's not being diluted, whatever. But when the pre-farm is used, and the pre-farm has been used pretty substantively by CNI to continue to fund operations. Now that, I think, is to the benefit of everybody that is interested in Chia, that wants to see Chia succeed, and that wants to see this blockchain gain good adoption. It seems like a good thing. But when you take $4 million worth of Chia and you dump it into the hands of a company that then turns around to use Akash, that doesn't seem like a great thing for Chia token holders. And that is like reaching into your pocket when the Fed prints money and devalues the dollar. So we have devalued Chia so that we can pump Akash's bags. So if you are holding Akash, I think you're feeling pretty happy at this point, because you just sucked a whole bunch of value out of Chia and dumped it straight into the Akash ecosystem.
And I don't know if some of the rationalization of this is, oh, we're going to get money back from Silicon in the future, but I honestly don't care. That $5 million, $4 million, whatever the convertibility was of Chia or XCH at the time, could have done a lot for some of the projects that exist in the Chia ecosystem, or could have been used to court other partners. But I don't know. I guess there is no I
You're speechless.
I'm speechless. I'm
speechless because when I got to this, it's like, this is calculated, man. I mean, there's no backpedaling from this. You publish a piece of documentation like this, and you have to go in with eyes wide open saying, we're not putting Chia on the deck. It's being left off. And either these conversations happened and they told CNI all about this and they are well aware, or this is news and we're going to see some serious backpedaling at this point. I don't know which it is, honestly. I am pretty convinced that what we've said in the title is correct, that they have no intention of using it, because I don't see how you could author a page like this, go through all the effort of putting together this idea of how you're going to do stuff. And to me, it's also kind of strange with this company, with the amount of money that they've got, that what we see from Silicon is pretty consistently these types of pitch decks. We see a lot of, well, we're working on stuff and we're doing this, but I don't see a lot of real progress being made, honestly. And so here is kind of another reboot. I guess they must have sat in the conference rooms over in Silicon Valley for a few weeks, months. I don't know however long they've been trying to get this stuff to work, and decided they didn't have the internal talent to make it work on Chia. And I guess they figured that they did on Akash, although I've used that Akash technology. And the last time I looked at it, it was pretty rough. It was pretty hard to use, but they've definitely come a long way since the last time I looked at it, and had a lot more traction, investment, whatever. So, maybe it got a lot better, and they just made their choice. And so Chia's out and Akash is in.
Well, and speechless. I'm trying to find the words, but I think part of why I'm a little bit speechless is one. I was very surprised about this, and I don't know what people assume you and I talk about, or we talk about before and after the show, but usually we're we spend time talking on this show. We're getting ready for the daily episode. When I first saw the announcement of Berkeley Compute / Silicon, I assumed that this was aligned with and in partnership with Evergreen. And my that erroneous assumption led to our episodes, because my surprise, I wanted to know what was going on with Evergreen. But I'm blown away that part of the consideration in CNI courting Silicon wasn't that there was a preservation of that aspect of the farming community. Blown away. And that support doesn't go to James or whoever's supporting that ecosystem is mind-boggling to me. And
Isn't it? I mean, to me, that's the weirdest thing out of all of this. You have people like James, so committed to Chia. I mean, he has been grinding in the trenches building Chia Tech since forever, and continues to do so. You would think CNI would go bang on that door and be like, here's money. Thank you for continuously supporting the community, building Fast Farmer, making sure that these evergreen devices don't go offline. I mean, if CNI and Chia wants to have a really high Nakamoto value, Evergreen has thousands of nodes out there, and they were all scheduled to go offline. They were all scheduled to just be shut off, completely non-functional. And James swooped in and saved it. I mean, that's probably worth at least $250,000 to $500,000. Why wouldn't CNI go dump money on him to say, keep doing what you're doing? You're awesome. That full node that you're going to build, you should keep doing it. No, instead we get this. We get this, and we get all that $4 million going into Akash.
I mean, there's also Data Layer, and there's also Kin. I mean, there are two more developers, and the other, the other relationship that I thought some of the tech that Silicon would be bringing to the table at Chia that might complement would be Data Layer. But it seems like Michael Taylor is forging on with Data Layer on his own, and with no support from CNI. I haven't heard from Michael some of the details with regards to that. I'm glad that Silicon pulled him in, and he got some of that funding, but I would have thought that there would have been more concentration into building out Data Layer,
especially after that there was some thought that Data Layer was such cool tech that other blockchains wanted it, and he refused. He said, I'm going to keep doing it on Chia. I refuse to take this to some other blockchain. And no support from CNI to build that. And I don't know if it's because CNI views that as kind of a black eye on what they've done for Data Layer, because Data Layer adoption really hasn't gotten any traction outside of the limited use case for what's happening with the voluntary carbon markets. It hasn't really been used or adopted anywhere. Michael has put a tremendous amount of money into it. I mean, he's paid out of pocket for updated smart contracts. He's continued to fund it out of his own pocket, because he feels like he's building the next thing, the decentralized internet. And It is fundamentally rooted in Chia technology. No support from CNI. I don't know if like Dexi's gotten substantive support from CNI, but like every time we talk about Permuto, I don't see how Permuto can possibly exist without something like Dexi. So this investment in silicon, and to have them turn around and stab them in the back like this, it's I'm just shaking my head. My hand is in my face today. It's like a total facepalm. What is going on here?
Well, and there are other aspects of the Chia ecosystem that we we seem never to talk about anymore. Verifiable credentials. Who's building on verifiable credentials? Things that we are excited about. Like, hey, you know, let's fix the locked in royalties. I mean, I don't mean to throw all of my complaints in together today, but I'm disgusted. And if I'm going to be speechless, I'm going to just complain about everything. Have you spoken with other members of the Chia community since you've seen this? And if so, what have you heard from them?
I haven't yet, because I woke up to this. I was looking more at stuff that was happening in the news and was very concerned about that, and then this rolls in. I almost would have waited, honestly, if I was their team. I wouldn't have released this today. I would have waited till Monday or something. I mean, let the world events kind of shake out a bit. So no, I haven't had the chance to catch up with anybody yet. I imagine there'll be a lot of people waking up this morning and wondering what's going on here, and we're kind of pointing it out. I think you'd have to read through this entire deck and get to this point and start asking yourself whether they're actually using Chia. I thought maybe I read it wrong, so I went to the AI. I went to Grok and I asked Grok. I said, what blockchain is Silicon using based on this article? And it said, I can't tell what blockchain they're using particularly, because they don't really say it, but the fact that Akash and RunPod are called out seem to be forming the basis of the tech. That's the way the AI read this. And then I went further. I kept pressing it. I was like, they took money from CNI, they took money from Chia. Is there any evidence that, from what you're reading in here, that there's any usage of Chia? And Grok confirmed that it had no inclination that there was any usage of Chia in here. This also probably needs to get pinned into the web archive, because if they go back and change something, whatever, it would be interesting as an artifact to see what the original version of this document was when they published it this day.
Well, um, uh, I don't know what else to say about it. I don't know if you have anything. I don't know if we want to do a short episode today or try to draw it out and dig into the details of it. But I honestly don't care if it's not on Chia. I don't care.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why people in the Chia community would at this point even be, retweeting, reposting, giving any press to this anymore. Uh, and I'd love to hear, Paul Hainsworth, the CEO of Silicon, come out and talk about this. If this is not the intent, if they still truly intend to build on top of Chia, why leave it off the deck? Why publish this like this? Because if we're wrong and we totally got this wrong, come on here and tell us all about the investments that you're making in Chia, the amount of effort you've put in. I mean, I would love to hear it, because honestly, I'm not seeing it. And even some of the way, I don't know if you can see this, but do you see how the colors don't align on this little section here?
I do.
That to me says that somebody authored this inside of a pitch deck, and they dropped a graphic from inside the pitch deck, and then they didn't align the colors. Because this is like, it's on a straight black page, but it looks like when the pitch deck got authored, that they used it not exactly black, and that's why this is like this. Because see the little silicon in the lower left hand corner, that sure looks like a pitch deck watermark to me. So I'm kind of curious why at this point in its career and its life that Silicon is still making pitch decks. Like, what's the point of doing that? Because to author this on a pure black, super easy, and make it align. I don't know if this was some kind of technique, but just from a graphic design perspective, it looks kind of weird. So makes me think that this was part of some other piece of material that was either sitting there or was authored, given to somebody else, and now they made it for more public distribution because they wanted to I don't know, be more public about it or something.
And you mentioned that that Silicon that was it Paul that was at Chia Toronto? Did Paul give one of the talks at Chia Toronto? Because uh, if Silicon attended or sent representatives to Chia Toronto, it would seem that they were still building on Chia.
I what I heard happened at Chia Toronto was that Silicon was represented there. I believe Paul was there. I didn't actually get a chance to go listen to his talk. Probably be interesting to do so to see what he specifically said and if we had any evidences at that point. At Toronto, it was my understanding that they tried moving around some of those GPU NFTs and that was a struggle, not only to onboard into Chia, because there were some people that wanted to get access to those NFTs and that there wasn't a good way to onboard. There wasn't a good way to get Chia. And to me, that was really weird too, because Silicon got Chia. They were given Chia as the investment. So if they ever wanted to onboard anybody, they could have done the exact same thing that CNI is planning on doing with their ACH Chia onboarding, which is to just sell the Chia directly. It's like you want to onboard somebody and be like, here, give me $50 in cash. I'll send you the Chia right now from my app. It should have been so bonehead easy to do. It's like, why would you mess around with any other kind of onboarding mechanisms? And that's, to me, was one of the reasons why I thought that it was disingenuous that they were really building on top of Chia, because if they were, then they would have put in place a mechanism to onboard people into their ecosystem without having to worry about, well, you got to go to crypto.com and go through KYC and do all this kind of stuff. It's like, we're going to set up our own mechanism for liquidity. We're going to set up our own mechanism for making sure that people can come in here and get these NFTs because we want people to hold them, because this is the mechanism. It was like trying to do payments with extra steps. Like, I don't know, man. So weird.
Well, yeah, I will go find I'll go find the if Paul gave a talk or somebody from Silicon gave a talk at Chia Toronto, I'll see what I can find and I'll share it with you. And maybe we should put it in the show notes of this episode so that the other members of the Chia community can go back and give a listen to what was stated just a couple of weeks ago, before this surprise announcement from Silicon today. I don't have anything else I want to talk about with this. I don't know if you have anything else.
I don't think we need to belabor this one too much. I think we've kind of covered it here. There's no announcement of Chia. They were left off the deck. I think if you're in the Chia community and you have these questions, start asking. Like, honestly, I think, this is a call to action for everybody in the Chia community. There ought to be real clarity here. If they've decided to abandon Chia, then maybe it's time that they return that money or return the unused portion of it. If they spent a bunch of it, whatever, that's money gone. But if they've decided to get in bed with Akash, then they ought to hit Akash up for money and build on top of their platform. And if RunPod is one of their partners, then maybe RunPod's got some money to toss the way of Silicon. But I don't see why they should hold on to that Chia money. And I think the only reasonable and honorable thing to do is, if you decided not to build on top of Chia, to return the cash, return the Chia. And if you spent it, then give back the money. I mean, that happens sometimes when you take an investment and you give it back and give it back.
Well, it seems like Silicon has been reporting some earnings. Maybe they can pay that money back. I would hope that CNI also, though, if they're going to be making investments out of the pre-farm, will make it a requirement for receivers of those investments to build on Chia. I mean, again, that comes out of a pool that's shared by people who support and believe in the Chia blockchain. And I understand the decisions that they made to invest in other companies. I understand all of that. But I don't know if that was overlooked or if they had any expectation that Silicon was not going to be building on Chia, but I hope they address that for any future investments.
All right. Well, we'll be watching it closely, and if you have concerns, if you want to hear from Paul, hit him up. He's out there on on X. You can ask him directly. So we'll make sure that link to his profile is in the show notes, and we'll see you next week on FOMO.